Let's talk about the biggest international headline. After 15 months of a bloody war, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a deal that will pause the war in Gaza. However, it still awaits the final approval. Just hours after the deal was reached, Israeli airstrikes killed at least 45 people in Gaza, and Israel has postponed a key cabinet vote that would have approved this deal. On the whole story, let's understand how the ceasefire will progress, will it permanently end the war, and who gets the credit for it. The current ceasefire deal will take place in 3 phases, but the details reportedly approved by both sides have not been announced yet. Once the deal is announced, Phase 1 is expected to start this Sunday, that is 19th of January, and will last for 6 weeks. It includes the gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces from central Gaza and the return of displaced Palestinians to northern Gaza. The deal requires 600 truckloads of humanitarian aid to be allowed into Gaza every day of the ceasefire, 50 of them carrying fuel and 300 of the trucks allocated to the north. Hamas will release 33 Israeli hostages, including all women, soldiers and civilians. The first to be released will be female hostages, and it will also include American hostages. Living hostages will be released first, followed by the remains of dead hostages in gradual phases. Israel will release all Palestinian women and children under the age of 19 detained since October 7, 2023 by the end of the first phase. The total number of Palestinians released will depend on the hostages released by Hamas, and this number could be between 990 to 1,650. Let's talk about the second phase. The negotiations will begin by the 16th day of Phase 1 and is expected to include the release of all remaining hostages, including Israeli male soldiers, a permanent ceasefire, and the complete withdrawal of Israeli soldiers. A third phase is expected to include the return of all remaining dead bodies and the start of Gaza's reconstruction, supervised by Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations. And Israel also delayed a key cabinet vote on this ceasefire. It blamed Hamas for going back on its promises. Israel has now said it will not officially accept anything until the country's cabinet votes on it. Well, this is also being attributed to the opposition Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing internally. His own finance minister has publicly opposed the ceasefire deal and has threatened to quit the government if the deal is approved. The big question: who will ensure the terms of the ceasefire? The answer is Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. Now, who gets the credit for it? Both President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump has tried to take the credit for the ceasefire. Joe Biden said from the White House, and I quote, "My diplomacy never ceased in their efforts to get this done."
After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans.
Trump, meanwhile, wrote on social media, and I quote, "This epic ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November, as it signaled to the entire world that my administration would seek peace and negotiate deals to ensure the safety of all Americans and our allies." Trump, meanwhile, wrote on social media, and I quote, "This epic ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November, as it signaled to the entire world that..."
The last hour. Anything can happen between the bells. But what happens during the last hour is what matters the most. The biggest market swings. A close-up look at what's driving them and how the investors are reacting. Watch the most seasoned market mavens guide you through the most important hour of the trading day. NSE Closing Bell. At these times, only on CNBC-TV18 and CNBC-TV18.com.
For more news and updates, all you need to do is follow CNBC TV18 on all of our digital platforms.